We're about to get started. If we can get you all to mute your microphones as you come on, that would be wonderful. I think I've just activated the mute all attendees anyway, so I think we're good. Fabulous. Okay. So would you like to take it away?
Morning, everyone. I'm Jo Shepherd. I'm the CEO of the Queensland Farmers Federation. It's wonderful to have you join us this morning. As we all know, there is an awful lot going on in the energy space at the moment. So QFF are really wanting to support our members and the ag sector more broadly to better understand what the challenges and some of the opportunities might be, and different spots in the supply chain where businesses and communities might have the opportunity to engage. So with this project, we are seeking to understand what the appetite for some of these new technologies are in regional communities and also amongst farmers and agriculture. So it's wonderful that you've joined us this morning. You will hear an overview of emerging energy technologies and understand a bit more about our research project, which we would love for you to participate in if it's relevant. So thanks for coming. Enjoy the webinar. Please make sure that you ask all the questions. No question is a silly question, so please ask the questions as we go through. But I shall hand back to you, Maddie, I think, to get us underway.
Yes, thank you very much, Jo. And we'll see you later. Thanks for your time. Okay, can everyone see and hear me well? I have a limited view. Let's try it this way, I think. One more time. Okay, I'm going in blind. Bear with me. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. We are recording this webinar. So this will be available if you happen to drop out and have patchy internet. Please don't fear. We will send this out to everyone once the recording is complete. So I am the Energy Innovation Officer at QFF. So I'll give you a quick overview of what's happening with the energy transition. As Jo mentioned, it's a top to bottom transition, and we would love to really just focus in on what's happening in regional Queensland. So right from the top, if we're thinking about the reasons why this transition is happening, our networks and our generation systems are really quite old and are outliving their lifespan, doing a little better than we expected. But what that does mean is there is a fast approaching, and unfortunately quicker than expected, approaching need for us to replace this infrastructure. That's transmission and distribution networks. At the same time, we have a new suite of energy technology available to us. This existing technology is about 100 years old, if not older in some cases. So with these two-way, flexible, smart, enabled and enhanced technology that we have today, there's an opportunity for a really big change and an upgrade and a modernization of our grid and the assets that are connected to and attached to that grid. Now, what is also driving that change is the fact that these new technologies are finally approaching, or in some cases have surpassed, the tipping point of affordability compared to legacy infrastructure. So this chart here is demonstrating the levelized cost of energy. So if you're buying a brand new coal station, gas, solar or wind, then this is the cost over the lifetime of that investment. And as you can see in this far corner over here, solar and wind in particular are significantly cheaper than a lot of this these legacy generation assets. So it's putting up that it's not just a moral imperative now for those who are driven by decarbonisation. It just makes money sense. So on top of that, we also have federal and state governments making massive shifts in their policy priorities, including decarbonising Australia's energy network now, and energy market rather. So recently the Queensland State Government announced its Energy and Jobs Plan, So as you can see there, there's 70% renewable energy target by 2032. And that's a pretty short runway to make massive changes. So with changing tech, changing financing and changing policy, there is, regardless of your political persuasion, your preference of tech, there is a shift now. So the big question is, how do we make sure that regional Queensland can benefit from that? And more generally speaking, here's what the shift looks like. It means that the generation is changing from majority, if not complete, fossil fuels to a diverse mix of different generation types. It also means we're going from a centralized network where there are large power systems that just distribute one way out to consumers, to decentralized systems where it's where you basically orchestrate. You orchestrate the ebbs and flows and the two-way flows across an interconnected network. There's a nationally owned and national scale transmission networks, and that will still exist, obviously, but there's a big blend of types of distribution and transmission resources, including community batteries. There's pumped hydro coming into the mix there, and how that impacts the way we transmit energy. Generally speaking, it's, again, we're moving from this top to bottom to a bidirectional flow of where energy moves throughout the network from customers to service providers. And customers are going from being passive to being active market participants. So if you have rooftop solar, you will already know what that experience is like. And as electric vehicles come on board, as batteries become much cheaper, the breadth of market participants is really expected to expand. So I might just dive into what some of these technologies are. So we generally bundle them, these new modern energy tech, into the term DERs, distributed energy resources. So anything that's not a utility-owned, utility-scaled energy resource, and often something that's not owned by the utilities. So your rooftop solar, so generation, it might not just be solar, but that's probably the most commonly known one. Storage, so batteries are typically the most common of your distributed energy resources. Hydrogen production, especially if it's on farm, that's a great example of a DER. And also data and controls, so smart meters, microgrid controllers, which is like a brain to coordinate generation plus storage, and load. So electric vehicles are a smart enabled energy resource that is distributed, as in not at a central point.
Excuse me, Maddie, can I just pause you there?
Yes.
Can everybody see the slide in Maddie's background? Of sounds like Amanda can't, but can everyone see the presentation with Maddie in the foreground?
That's a great question. An important one, even.
I certainly can.
Okay. Good. Are you happy for me to keep going, Andrew? All right, I'll charge ahead, and if the visuals aren't working, I'll try and make my language just as evocative. So with those DERs, they're basically like Lego pieces that you can arrange in different ways to be different types of smart, modern energy resources. So one version is a virtual power plant. So if we're looking at a neighborhood or a small community, there might be several homes that have some batteries, several that have just solar. Maybe there's a community battery sitting next to the council building, perhaps, as well. And each of these at different times of the day are going to have excess energy that maybe the feed-in tariff won't pick up and won't value. So what a virtual power plant does is, in a virtual way, so with a computer brain at the center of it all, it aggregates all of these energy resources, these assets, and then distributes the flow of energy, whether it is literally, which is not quite often at this point in time, it is a much more complex technology, or it creates like a balancing off mechanism where it might discount or add to your energy bill in real time and trade for you amongst this closed network. So that might be on the spot market, it might be on the national FCAS market, and so that's an ancillary market to grid assets and resources. So it just depends on what the ownership model is, but it's virtually managed by aggregating existing physical assets. And you also have microgrids, are probably the more or most complex way of aggregating and designing a collection of these DERs. So a microgrid simply is a generation and storage, an energy distribution network that has generation and storage with a brain that services energy and distributes energy to within its own physical footprint. So if you ignore the left-hand side, it's whatever your generation asset is, whatever your consumption load is, whatever your storage load is, and then a brain to control it all in a single geographic area. Now it can be standalone, and there are some remote communities in Queensland that Ergon Energy is currently transitioning to a standalone. But you can also be grid tied, and that is much more complex, and regulation currently doesn't allow it, but there's no technical reason why that's not possible. And if you have that kind of setup, it allows you to trade and share with the utility, with other microgrids, or with other virtual power plants or VPPs, or local energy markets. So a local energy market essentially is a spot market that happens in a contained region. And so, as you can see, with these DERs that we spoke about before, these building blocks, we really can scale up the complexity, but still in a localized area of new and flexible ways of generating, distributing, and benefiting from energy systems. And so what that presents to regional communities is hyper-local and relatively efficient energy systems depending on the needs of you, the customer, whether the community wants to have its own VPP, whether a business wants to for its own affordability and resilience to blackouts and other disruptions, whether it wants to have its own microgrid or its own battery. There's many different ways that you can blend these technologies to service your energy needs. And I think that really feeds into the general concept of power of choice, or the democratization of energy, where the customer, it's a consumer-led approach to how we can be building these modern energy systems. I think as well, a lot of people are thinking more and more about decarbonisation, and it is affecting more and more businesses, especially those that need to trade internationally, for example. It can be quite difficult to do so without decarbonisation. So there's a competitive advantage risk there as well. So many opportunities there for the tech that's available. It's just, is the regulation there yet? And how can we advocate for regional communities that are interested in this technology to have the permissions and the enabling infrastructure, enabling regulatory infrastructure developed around them to offer consumer-led solutions. I'll leave it there for now because I'm sure there's plenty of questions. But before we do dig into questions, I'll hand over to Amanda from LGAQ. Amanda, simply because you're having issues with like seeing faces, how about we have you just bring up your slide if that's okay?
Okay, that might be a problem.
Sorry about that. No, that's okay. I'll bring it up for you and we'll do our best.
I can see it now.
Can see it? Fabulous. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. Okay, can you still see me? Am I still a ghost? Okay, well, you get started and I'll try and change that while you're talking.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amanda Dryden and I'm the Manager of Planning, Development and Environment at LGAQ. And today, if we can change the slide. I wanted to give you an overview of local government's advocacy positions with respect to renewables and energy. It's certainly a changing world, and energy is becoming a major issue for local government in Queensland. Today, I'm going to run you through our advocacy priorities in this area to both the state and federal governments. And the next slide, please. Every year we produce an advocacy action plan. The AAP includes 144 different requests to be made to the state and or federal governments on behalf of our sector. These demonstrate both the extent of our sector's advocacy challenge and the critical role local government plays in every aspect of community life. In terms of our energy and decarbonisation requests in 2022, they related to asking for money to accelerate the delivery of actions to adapt to climate risks and transition to a low carbon economy through the establishment of regional climate alliances of local government, to develop targeted long-term capacity building program for Queensland businesses, particularly suppliers to government, to support their transition to low emissions products and services, to develop an integrated renewable energy strategy for Queensland in consultation with local governments, including the identification and delivery of renewable energy projects in Queensland renewable energy zones, to review the land use planning and regulatory approval processes for renewable energy projects in consultation with local government, to support the ongoing protection of important agricultural areas and quality agricultural land, and ensure the social and economic benefits of renewable energy projects are delivered in local communities. This is certainly a major focus for local government. And to also fund transition planning for regions impacted by the closure of coal-fired operations. Throughout the year, the LGAQ's advocacy team work with members to progress the AAP requests with the relevant level of government. We do this through meetings, submissions, correspondence, working groups, forums and public campaigns. As Maddie touched on, the Queensland Government's Energy and Jobs Plan has been released on the 28th of September. In terms of LGAQ, we'll be providing information to councils on the Energy and Jobs Plan and what that means in terms of our advocacy. And obviously we'll also lodge submissions on behalf of local government to advance the stated advocacy positions in our policy statement, our advocacy action plan and resolutions from our annual conference. Next slide, please. At LGAQ, we have been funded for a number of years to run the Queensland Climate Resilient Council's program. This program was to be completed by the 30th of June 2022, but it's been extended until the 30th of June 2023. This program currently has 54 member councils. And it aims to improve governance mechanisms of local government to address climate risk. There's a number of different components to this program, which includes grants for councils to undertake climate risk management strategies, to pilot some regional alliances, which is part of our other advocacy work. And we also ran 4 decarbonisation projects on Great Barrier Reef Islands, Massic Island, Palm Island, Magnetic Island and Great Keppel. The Great Keppel, the Magnetic Island project looked at microgrids and did some initial project work on how the community might be able to implement them. The program underspend, so in the coming 6 months, we will be doing a regional alliance symposium in conjunction with the Department of Environment and Science, and we'll be developing a business case of what supports councils need in the future moving forward in this area. We have a new program manager, Emma Schofield, and at annual conference this year, councils requested an extension to this program to provide for more councils to undertake climate risk management strategies, and also for the development of regional alliances. One of the other important components of this program is the governance assessments that are that have been undertaken, and they review core governance documents publicly available against established benchmarks to assess the extent that climate risk is considered. And the councils participating in the program certainly achieve higher governance scores than non-participating councils. Next slide. We've recently just completed, like last week, our 126th LGAQ annual conference. At that annual conference, there were a number of resolutions that were put to the floor. 136 in total, 130 got passed, and there were numerous resolutions relating to energy and the development of renewable projects in the regions. So resolution 23 relates to councils becoming net producers of energy by 2035. This reflects that renewable energy is a key priority for the Queensland Government, which wishes to accelerate an ambitious target of 50% renewable energy by 2030. As many councils are the largest users of energy in their communities, there's an opportunity for councils to lead their communities in the use of renewable energy, contributing to the state's agenda, supporting the growth of the emerging energy sectors and achieving greener footprints for communities. But it is our position that the state and federal government should provide financial support to councils in order to achieve this. Next slide. Our other resolution, Resolution 50, is supporting communities' plan to transition to a lower carbon future. The Queensland Climate Strategy recognises that local governments have an important role to play in facilitating and supporting the progress towards the zero net emissions goal. The Queensland Government will support local governments to integrate climate change initiatives across their functions and provide leadership within councils and the local community through the existing Climate Resilient Councils program. 6 years after the introduction of the strategy, and now it's clear with federal leadership on this issue, it's imperative for the state government to honour their strategic commitment to provide local government with the resourcing required to facilitate transition planning. In addition to recognition of the impact of the federal government's net zero emissions by 2050 commitment will have on many regional communities, local government calls on the federal government to recognise that those regional communities which will be most impacted by economic transition are also best placed to identify the opportunities they have in the future. It's the responsibility to facilitate the broad community engagement and require well-planned transition, and this obviously falls to the state and federal governments, and it's essential that funding is provided to local government to facilitate community engagement given the regional issues and stakeholder relationships required. So Resolution 51, local governments to transition to net zero emissions. This relates to our position as being responsible for a range of emissions, including those associated with fuels in their fleet and plant, landfill, wastewater treatment and electricity required to power buildings, community facilities and street lighting. As such, there's an imperative for Queensland local government to reduce their organisational emissions in line with the state and federal government targets and to show leadership within their communities as we transition towards a low carbon economy. So councils are out there looking to lead in our regions in these areas. Resolution 74 related to resourcing of state regulators of major resource and renewable energy projects. The intent of the focus of this resolution is to deliver a much improved focus on education and assessment processes and more prominent understanding of social impacts vital for achieving optimal outcomes for industry and communities in alignment with the intent of the environment, social and governance commitments of the Resource Industry Development Plan. Resolution 75, which is the next slide, looks for an establishment of a contemporary framework for resource, renewables and clean energy sector. Council strongly urged the state to consider a wholesale review of the regulatory frameworks associated with resource, renewable and clean energy projects to deliver consistent outcomes relative to the size and impacts of these projects, as opposed to the multi-tiered, multi-agency assessment processes which lack integration and can overlook external impacts beyond the scope of their own assessment frameworks. And my final slide is in relation to Resolution 78, which is about renewable energy project contributions and engagement with local communities. This provides a statutory mechanism for local governments to negotiate with project proponents the specific commitments they make to ensuring local communities benefit. A similar framework to the Strong and Sustainable Resource Communities Act is not in place for the renewable energy projects in Queensland. Rather, the planning and development approval processes vary for renewable energy projects. For example, local governments are typically the assessment managers for solar farm developments, whereas the state government is the assessment manager for wind farms under the Planning Regulation 2017. And SDAP Code 23 applies to the assessment of wind farm projects. Under the Queensland Planning Act, formal public notification of development proposals is only required in relation to impact assessable development. So councils have a very well stated need to consult and engage with their communities on these critical projects, particularly in the areas that are feeling the brunt of these kinds of developments. So I'll pause there and hand back to you, Maddie.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's really great to see that councils have hit the ground running in response to, quite a lot of change in just a couple of months. And, that's quite a variety of councils as well that are putting their hand up to respond to their needs. So that's really, really great. Andrew, have you noticed any questions rolling in at all? You're on mute, by the way. I might also add, we will be explaining the project that is related to this topic shortly, just after this Q&A. But I also wanted to mention, which was a little implied, and I should make explicit, that we are very lucky to have LGAQ as a partner as we go through this project. Hence Amanda giving us the rundown from the local government perspective. So thank you. Andrew, any questions that have popped up so far?
Well, just the one, Maddie, to start with. Probably once we get into some more details about the project, there might be a couple more. But I just wondered if you could maybe give an example about what the DER and what those models, the VPP and microgrid you talked about, might look like for a regional business or a regional group of businesses. So a farm with a number of energy connections, or a group of businesses within an industrial precinct, for example, in a regional town.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So in the case of agriculture, we have a lot of farms have multiple meters on their site. As many as 20 to 30 is not unheard of, and there's currently no function for farmers to consolidate or share energy between those meters, especially once they've added solar to each of those meters. So with ag having quite seasonal loads, there are many months at a time where some of those meters will have active solar with nowhere to benefit from the use of that solar. So if a farm decides to then go ahead and figure out that they have enough size for a microgrid, then that's a function that allows them to really just consolidate all of their energy assets. They have plenty of generation on farm already that maybe they're only using 3 months of the year. They can share it across their farm. And then if there is any excess energy in their low energy use seasons, there's a few options there as to how you can make use of that energy. So perhaps you want to produce fertilizer via hydrogen electrolyzer on site. But maybe the community that farm is attached to has a virtual power plant or a local energy market that they can trade that excess with for the months that they are generating that excess. What might also happen is, as Andrew mentioned before, you might have an industrial park or you might have a housing development where it is a very contained group of energy consumers. It's a very discrete physical footprint. That's another opportunity to have something like a virtual power plant or a microgrid. So it just depends on how significant of an intervention you want that infrastructure to be. A really good example is down in the Narrabri Wee-Waa region in New South Wales. That community is quite committed to transitioning to becoming fully renewable. So they're currently working on a community battery and they're quite interested in setting up their own local energy market or virtual power plant. So any farmers that are in that region that might have excess energy, should that be something that regulation allows in the hopefully not too distant future, then that's a great opportunity for a microgrid investment to really stack its value streams. So value stacking. So it's not just that they get to reduce their own energy bill on farm, but they then have a new off-taker for the energy that they generate. So there's lots of different scenarios there that councils, businesses, communities can all consider. And I'm just being respectful of Amanda's time. She's got to duck off soon. So if there's any questions specific to local government, now is your time. If you think of something later, we can also send that through to her after the meeting.
No problems. Thank you very much, Maddie. And I note that Gary Scanlon has picked up a motion that I missed as well. There were, and as you can see, that this is a real issue for local government. It's something that we are going to have as a very large priority moving forward, and it's certainly not an issue that's going to go away. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just knocked the camera. Sorry. Thank you so much, Amanda. I'll talk to you later. Okay, so what we might now do is hand over to Jonathan. Jonathan is also working on this project, which we have not spoken of, so that is now his job. Jonathan, feel free to take.
Yeah, thank you, Maddie. I would like to share my screen if that's okay. Just bear with me for a sec. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Perfect. So thank you, Maddie. Just a couple of slides that I would like to share with the audience as well. But firstly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Mendes. I'm a project officer at Queensland Farmers Federation. Together with Madison and Andrew, we work with a number of energy projects for focusing on solving several issues for the sector, for agricultural sector. So this is one of them, and well, we're very happy to participate in this kind of research. So just a quick project overview on the project. What we are looking to achieve by doing this, and what are we needing from the audience and from the people. So the name of the project is Distributed Energy Resources Market Research, but also called as Localized Energy in Regions. Before describing what does the project looks like, I would like to share a couple of dot points addressing some of the issues that Madison already mentioned before. So, well, firstly, in 2018, Queensland contributed more greenhouse gas emissions as compared as any other state and territory, with a 32% share. Second, that agriculture was one of the highest emitting sectors in 2018, with a 12% share, and one of the main consumers of energy as well. Third point is that the agricultural sector is facing increasing electricity and fuel prices as well, and this is a main concern for the sector. Next point is that we have over 30,000 businesses carrying out agricultural activity in Queensland. So that means that the sector is pretty important for the economic development of the state. Next point is that an estimated 40% of farmers are already generating renewable energy on farm. That means they can have many of the technologies Mari already mentioned. Could be solar panels, could be biogas. So all these technologies are part of the distributed energy resources. And the last point is that more than 88% of Queensland's land is currently used for primary production. So that also highlights the importance of the sector in this topic. So what are we doing? So we are doing a market research project. So for this, the Queensland Farmers Federation will conduct a market research to identify the emerging appetite for local DERs across Queensland renewable energy zones. I will show you what these zones are and where they are, and insights that improve the planning, utilization, and affordability of integrating these distributed energy resources on the regional electricity network. So this is quite of a challenge. We already have the technology is working, the technology is out there, but we need to find how big is this market and how we can work together in integrating it into the electricity network. So for this, we have a very simple process. First, from November to February, we're gonna survey around 100 regional council, agricultural, and business consumers across the renewable energy zones in Queensland. And then in March 2023, after we have all this data and we have processed all the information received from this service, we're going to publish it in a market map and identify current and future local DER projects. Pretty much as we are expecting it to be like a very simple map where all the public can just navigate through the map and understand where these DERs are located and how big they are. By finally sharing learnings, resources, and recommendations with stakeholders that we're expecting it to be happening around April and July 2023. So currently, we are just reaching the first milestone, which is doing the literature review, just trying to understand what we already mentioned, putting in words, trying to understand what the issue is, how the technology is at the moment, what kind of regulations we need to be in place for DERs to be integrated into the electricity network as well. So we are doing that at the moment, but also starting looking for people who is interested in participating in the consultation process as well. So finally, what we need, we are currently seeking participants for a short 20-minute phone survey. The eligible participants are first located in one of the 3 Queensland renewable energy zones. Those renewable energy zones are as illustrated in this image. We have 3 in Queensland. The first one, the northern renewable energy zone, the central, and the southern. For more information about this, you can just type in Google Queensland renewable energy zones, and we have the Queensland government already explaining who is involved in this and what kind of initiatives are being developed inside this QRES. The ideal participant would be a resident of a regional local council, and should be a council, agricultural or business energy consumer as well. And of course, someone that is interested in microgrids, virtual power plants, or community batteries, all these forming part of the DERs. So if you are interested in participate, please get in touch. You can scan the QR code that it's in sharing this in this slide. And we'll be very happy to speak with you and understand what their interests are. So pretty much that's it, Maddie. Thank you very much for the opportunity for me to speak here.
Thank you, Jonathan. And I should mention the most important feature of all is that all participants will receive a monetary gift card as well. So we shouldn't have forgotten that one as well, but there is a little incentive there. But as we said, it's a short 20-minute phone survey. So it's relatively quick and painless, and with a bit of reward there for your time. But yes, so as Jonathan's mentioned, this is, this is quite, as we've all basically mentioned, it's quite a critical time for energy. We want to make sure that regional communities and regional remote communities, that includes Indigenous councils as well, I should mention, aren't left behind in this process. It's very easy for, bottom-up interests to be neglected in these discussions and these conversations. When you have decentralized energy resources, it is the definition of bottom-up energy and energy networks and consumption. And we want to make sure that regions have their say in what they want, and that they're communicated to the stakeholders and integrated in the planning of this big change that's occurring nationwide over the next decade. So this is the opportunity to have your say and to really make sure that networks have a good understanding about what kind of a consumer you expect to be in the next decade and beyond. So with that said, please do consider signing up for our surveys if that's relevant. We already have a few councils and a couple of businesses that have registered. So thank you very much. And we look forward to hearing from many more of you, hopefully. And if you have any recommendations as well, any other businesses, councils, farmers out there that you think would be a good fit for this survey, please do pass this project along. Andrew, how are we going with questions? Have we got any hands?
I haven't got any hands up, but just got a couple of quick ones I might ask. Do people need to have an expert level of knowledge on batteries and solar panels and virtual power plants to be able to participate in the survey, Maddie?
Absolutely not. You need to be someone who consumes energy and someone who is thinking about the different ways that they can be consuming their energy. We'll also make sure that if you haven't participated in the live version of this, that we direct you to the little snippet that goes through some of this technology as well. But no, your level of understanding does not need to be an engineer's. You just need to be an energy consumer.
Thank you. And what sort of questions, I mean, I know you probably don't want to give away the survey for now, but just to give people a sense of the type of questions you might ask if they were to participate.
Yeah, sure. So I think some of the questions we'll be asking, well, when it comes to energy consumption, what are the levers that change and inform your decision making on how you consume energy? And then if scenario A, B, or C in the future were presented to you, what sounds appealing and why? So really, these are questions that, once again, if you're a consumer and you are a decision maker as far as that energy consumption goes for your enterprise or for your community, then I have no doubt you'll be able to answer those questions. I think we have a hand up there from
and I'm going to
Rowan.
Unmute Rowan and there we go.
G'day everyone. Thanks guys for holding the webinar. It's really informative. I work for Department of Ag and Fisheries, and not necessarily in this field, but what I constantly get is, I guess, what options from a producer is, what options have I got now? I know the Energy Savers site, Andrew, has got some good information about solar, wind, you know, and other options. And I guess what the question I'm getting from producers is what, and it's nice to hear that 40% have already adopted, and I'm guessing the majority of that will be solar that they've adopted, renewable energy, which is fantastic. And as you say, Madison, that it's just cost effective now. So that's irrespective of where your philosophies are and your ideas. It just makes sense to do that. But as I say, I still get those questions, you know, when you get in a conversation about what options have I got. Now, some producers probably do understand, but I think there's probably a lot who probably still don't understand. And yes, that's individual farms and the complexity of, yeah, if they've got a heap of meters, that's another issue to deal with. But ultimately, I think, you know, basically it'd be good to somehow get more information out there to producers to help them understand. And of course, what's out there today in 3 or 6 months is it's just a changing feast. So that within itself is a challenge for everyone. But yeah, so I guess a bit of a long-winded way of asking. Yeah, like I say, it's just a way of producers understanding what their options are. Thanks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Ron. And I think I might also be able to knock out at least a portion of Miles's question there as well about resilience. So QFF is just wrapping up a 2-year feasibility study on microgrids for agriculture. So we'll be next month releasing the findings of that publicly. We just have to tidy up a few things in the back before we release that to you all. But I think that's a really good start towards exactly what you've illustrated there. So there'll be, like I don't know if I mentioned, there's 4 different archetypes for microgrids and ag that we have assessed in that. But we've also offered some commentary about alternative interventions that are available to you and the strengths and weaknesses, and a bit of a comparison between that microgrid scenario and maybe if they went for a VPP or some less costly interventions as well. So that'll come into the fray in the next couple of months. And the findings, in fact, of that is what inspired this project. So it really is a follow-on of unfolding. As you said, every few months, this thing is going to look like a different beast. And Miles, the reason why that project came along is that it's part of the federal government's Regional and Remote Communities and Reliability Fund, which is a fund for regional and remote producers or bodies to understand how microgrids could offer greater resilience for communities and for farmers. So that wasn't just an ag specific project. We obviously, as being QFF, took an ag tilt. But yes, absolutely, resilience is a big motivator for people wanting to consider alternatives, whether it is resilience against outages. So maybe there's rolling brownouts. Like, you know, it's not uncommon for certain parts of the grid here in Queensland to have something like 200 brownout events in the year. And if you have certain machinery that needs that constant supply, then that becomes an issue really, really quickly. As you've also mentioned, natural disasters are a massive resiliency piece. If you look at the community of Malakuta down in Victoria, you might remember in the media, that was that town that was, you had people on the beach and the fire was between the beach and the community and they needed the military to come get them out. That's resilience, an issue of community resilience in a nutshell. It took many, many, many weeks before that community was able to connect to the grid again. So yes, absolutely. There's multiple scenarios that distributed, decentralized energy infrastructure does improve resilience, whether it's business, economic, environmental, social. And that's why we do want to encourage and understand the appetite for this infrastructure in regional communities, because I think more than urban communities, regional communities can see improved resilience from this technology. any other questions while you have us?
No, that's all for now.
Stephen, hello. No, I think we have Stephen's just popped his hand up in the nick of time.
Hi, Maddie. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I just thought I'd add a couple of things for you that are happening down here. Hopefully that we can link in with what you're doing up there.
Go right ahead and do tell everyone where down there is.
Down there is in, well, we're down the bottom of Victoria, not far from Malakuta actually. And just for those that are interested, Malakuta now has a very large battery that will keep them up when the grid is not available. And I'm sure there's places in Queensland that may need that now with the amount of flooding in New South Wales as well. So just an update on what's happening down here on microgrids on farms. We're trying to do a survey of 10 farms throughout Victoria with DELP, which is the Energy Department of the Victorian Government, and AgVic, which is the Agriculture Department. So we hope to get them moving fairly soon. As you know, we have Willandra that's operating partly as a microgrid, and we want to get that working completely as a microgrid within the next few months. And we expect that to occur. And we'll run a trial there as a complete microgrid. And one of the significant things that's happening right now is there's a project in Victoria called Project Edge. I don't know whether you're aware of it. It's a project between ARENA, AusNet Services, and forget the other one. It's actually AusNet Services Engineering Department. And we're about to be the first farm that's on that DER trial. So it's all at the moment houses and a small amount of commercial. But we've shown the head of that project for AusNet Services what a control microgrid is on a farm. He can't believe that we can control power that accurately if you put a bubble around a farm, but you can. And they're really interested in how that farm can interact with the grid. And they've developed a system called dynamic operating envelopes, which I'm sure are being developed in other areas that control how DERs can operate. And in this case, we're developing what will probably be a dynamic operating envelope around the farm rather than around a particular NIMI, because that could potentially stop parts of the farm from working when it wants to.
Exciting stuff.
So that's where we're at. So that will be running on a live farm. We'll probably eventually create a site so that people can actually see it running. The farm irrigated for about a week in September, and their power bill was minus $250.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. So I won't take any more of your time. It's good to catch up when you're back and where your report's going, which will be good. And all the best. Talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Stephen.
Bye.
And yeah, Stephen's doing some excellent work on grid connected microgrids for ag, and he's one of many that are offering demonstration installations around the country that hopefully will gain enough momentum to really get this regulation in line to integrate and value the resource and the assets that these actually are for the grid. Alrighty, well, if there's no other questions, going once, going twice. Thank you all for your time, and we look forward to each one of you signing up for our EOI, obviously, and that please do pass on this project to anyone that you think might be a good fit. We'd love to hear from them. Alrighty, well, with that being all said and done, thank you. We've got 4 minutes spare. That's all yours. We're happy to give it back to you. So have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.